What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, December 1st, 2016. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. So let's get started here. A lot of things developing on this whole recount three-ring circus. And what's going on up in Pennsylvania, originally, it's a very confusing mess, which is why really we ought to have a standardized set of election laws for the entire country. But in Pennsylvania, Jill Stein had actually missed the deadline to file for the recount herself, but there was a provision in the Pennsylvania law where if they could get petitions signed in so many counties, the recount could go forward. And we don't know how much money they spent and how many people they sent up there to get these petitions signed, or even if the signatures on the petitions are actually valid or not. But Judge Bernard A. Moore has dismissed the petitions from the 78 precinct, basically saying, first of all, the petitions were filed improperly, and mostly a lack of evidence, because the justification for the demand of a recount from Jill Stein was that Russians were hacking the electronic voting machines to steal votes from her and give them to Donald Trump or whatever it is. And the judge said, we keep coming back to the fact that the Pennsylvania voting machines are not connected to the Internet. There is zero evidence of hacking, and you can't come in here with a letter from computer experts saying it might be possible. That's not sufficient. So that is now over and done with over there in Pennsylvania. Now, over in Michigan, as you know, Jill Stein demanded a hand recount, and over there they basically said the judge rejected the lawsuit to force a hand recount. Jill Stein asked for a hand recount. Michigan said, no, we'll just run them through the machine again, because they've already had a hand recount. And she wanted a hand recount to just run out the clock on this and keep Michigan from showing up at the Electoral College, and the judge said, no, it'll be a machine recount. That's only going to take a couple of days. So that aspect of the case is out of play. Now, it is expected today that Trump will file his own recount regarding the objection. Let me back up here a little bit. Donald Trump is expected to file his objection to any recount in Michigan today, which would put a 2-day hold on the process while the Board of Election, or the Bureau of Elections, takes a look at it and considers the merits about whether a recount is merited or not. So that could actually be scotched. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. There's another independent presidential candidate, Roque de la Fuente, who has requested a recount of ballots in 5 counties out in Nevada. And here's where it gets interesting. Hillary Clinton won Nevada. And Roque de la Fuente is out there saying, basically, if we're going to be counting states with narrow victories, we should be counting the states that Hillary won by narrow margins, and that's what he's going to do. So they're going to recount 5 counties. If the discrepancy is greater than 1% for either Roque de la Fuente or Hillary Clinton, that will mandate a statewide recount. Wouldn't that be an embarrassment if Hillary's election fraud surfaced out there in Nevada, and Nevada was given back over to Donald Trump? So the circus is still going on, but overall it's looking more and more like Hillary's last-ditch effort to steal the White House through the Electoral College is in serious, serious trouble, which means that Donald Trump is in a great deal of personal, physical danger, and I hope his security is drinking lots of black coffee and staying sharp on this. I hope he's wearing his Kevlar Armani. I have to tell you, I am very, very concerned about all these public appearances he's making in his thank you tour. He really should have held off doing that until after the 19th, when the Electoral College is over, because if anything happens to Donald Trump before the 19th, if he gets shot, if his airplane falls out of the sky, if a lightning bolt strikes him, then the Electoral College would be perfectly free to hand the White House to Hillary Clinton. And nobody would really have an argument against it. Now, up in Michigan, because of all this brouhaha, they're moving to pass laws, once again, requiring voter ID. And what they're doing to try and get around all these arguments that it's racist and people are risking arrest if they show up with a photo ID. Basically, the proposed law in Michigan is if you go to vote and you don't have a photo ID, you will be allowed to fill out a provisional ballot. Then you will have 10 days to prove your identity and your legal status. Otherwise, the ballot is thrown out. Now, this whole idea that voter ID laws are somehow discriminatory or racist is ridiculous. Everybody has a photo ID in this country. The issue is, are you a legal citizen eligible to vote or not? And both votefraud.org and truethevote.org have come on out and said point blank, at a minimum, 3 million non-citizens voted in this last election. And here's a statistic you need to keep in mind. 177 of Hillary Clinton's 232 electoral votes came from states that do not require ID or photo ID to vote. And all of her votes were clustered in these very tightly packed urban centers where the illegal immigrants and the refugees are hanging out and the election fraud takes place. Nobody does election fraud driving across the Great Plains. The distances are too great. They go for those cities where there's lots of people, lots of potential voters packed together. Remember what that election supervisor in New York said. They just send in a bus. They pick up a bunch of people and they take them to a precinct and they vote without ID. Then they take them to another precinct and they vote without ID. And they can vote 10, 15, 20 times in the day. And there's no check to keep them from voting more than once. I like the system they have over in the Middle East. When you vote, you dip your finger in this little bottle of dye. And the dye takes about a week to wear off. And obviously, if you've got a purple finger, you're not allowed to vote anymore. I think it's a really great system. And I think we ought to have that here. Now, out in California, everybody's saying, oh, all those wacko liberals, they voted in Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won California. She may have won it with the illegal immigrant vote because of the high concentration of illegal immigrants that are in that state. But here's another reality. Donald Trump won 25 counties in California. It wasn't a clean sweep at all. Trump didn't lose California by much of a margin. If you look at the precinct maps and the county maps, Donald Trump swept this entire nation. Hillary's entire vote totals were concentrated in those urban centers, those democratically controlled liberal cities that are havens for the illegal immigrants and the refugees. All right, we're going to take a quick phone call. Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Oh, and before we do that, though, I got to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about politics. Bob, what's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just had a few questions, but first, speaking on behalf of my liberal friends, I don't like that purple dye idea. It's kind of icky, isn't it?
Well, what color would you like? We could do yellow, we could do green, we could do blue.
Let me check with them and I'll get back with you tomorrow, okay?
Okay. Actually, liberals hate anything that prevents them from engaging in massive voter fraud.
I actually have no liberal friends. Unfortunately, I do have some family members who are liberals, but I never speak with them.
Okay.
Kind of like that crazy aunt that you basically, compared with Hillary.
Yes.
Yesterday, John from Barbados mentioned Trey Gowdy for Attorney General. Trump has already nominated Sessions for that position.
Yes.
Secondly, yesterday you mentioned David Petraeus. Basically, you said he had, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that he had the stuff to be Secretary of State.
No, what I said is he's got experience dealing with foreign countries that Mitt Romney certainly does not. And that's why I think Petraeus would be definitely a better choice. And I'm looking at what Donald Trump is doing with his appointments, and everybody's complaining, oh, he's getting some of the old guard in there, he's getting these other weirdo, wacko people. Donald Trump's appointments are very easy to understand when you realize he's not picking people because of their ideology. He's going for competency. He's picking people who are smarter than himself in these areas of concern. And that really is a very good, very business-like way to do it. In fact, I remember the founder of Texas Instruments was asked in an interview what was the secret of the spectacular early success of the company. And the CEO said, it's really simple. I hire people who are smarter than I am.
Right. No, but I don't question Petraeus' experience and knowledge. I question his judgment, because this is the same man that called for the U.S. to ally with Al-Qaeda in Syria. So that's not the kind of person I would want to see as Secretary of State.
Yeah, but don't forget, hold it, this allying with Al-Qaeda was a U.S. policy. We're only just now finding that out, and it came all the way down from the White House itself, with Obama and Hillary Clinton were smuggling weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria. We had that document dumped from WikiLeaks showing that the CIA created ISIS to be a controlled proxy. Al-Qaeda is very much the same. We know Al-Qaeda is a fake because of the name. Al-Qaeda literally means the base in Arabic, but in Arabic slang it means a toilet. So you know this was all made up by somebody not really that familiar with the Arab culture.
Right. Yeah, but is it wise? I'm just saying, is it wise for Petraeus to make such a public statement and call for the U.S. to ally with Al-Qaeda in this plan to get mission to get Assad out of office? We should just align. I mean, they did create these people, but these people are crazy, though. They are insane, these bodies.
Petraeus may have been tapped to put out the trial balloon to see if the American people would go along with it. And it failed. And you'll see that a lot. And it's usually a big problem for the people who are tapped to do it. They say, we need to float this idea. You're the one who gets to go on TV and say we're going to ally with Al-Qaeda. And I'm sure Petraeus may not have been happy about that, the way Colin Powell was very unhappy over being forced to go into the UN and show a little bottle of talcum powder and claim it was anthrax.
Yeah. My last question was, you had mentioned Obamacare. You said a few months back or a few weeks back, you said that a lot of these health insurance companies are pulling out because they're losing money.
Yes.
But then a few days ago, you said because the young people and the young healthy people aren't signing up. Okay, that's why. But a few days ago, you said these healthcare companies are making money hand over fist.
I said the medical, the big pharmaceutical companies are making money hand over fist with rising prices, and that's another piece. That's another part of the pressure on the health insurance companies, because they're having to cover more and more of these skyrocketing prices for pills and treatments. And it's a very messed up system. As a matter of fact, I'm working on an article right now about how we need to go back to a system of thinking in terms of preventing illness rather than allowing illness to happen and then seeking to turn it into a profit center.
Right. Oh, Mike, one final thing. I saw something on LouRockwell.com by Lawrence Vance mentioning this recruitment problem for the military. Do you know that 40% of the military come from 6 states? 6 states only. I'm sure they're mostly from the South. Most of the enlisted personnel come from the South. Most of the officer corps comes from the North.
Yes.
So, something to put out there.
Well, pardon me, most of the officer corps comes from the North because that's where all the military academies are located.
Right, but it just seems like these poor Southern, boys from the rural areas, the hicks that the North likes to refer to them as, are the ones who are really doing the dying.
Yeah, they're the bullet catchers.
Have contempt for.
Yeah,
right, they have people the North, the elite have contempt for. They're the ones who are dying in these stupid wars.
Well, remember what Henry Kissinger said about military men? They're just dumb, stupid pawns to be spent in foreign policy. That really is the attitude.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, like you always say, the parents should sit down with their kids and say, don't go near the military. Avoid these recruiters. Don't pay any attention to them.
Well, unfortunately, recruiters are allowed to go onto the campuses of the high schools and directly approach the kids, and the schools can't prevent it, or they lose their funding. And it really is stacked up. And I often wonder, all these military-style games that are being given away for free, and yes, it's a come on, you got to buy bigger bombs and stuff down the road. But there was one that was actually created by the U.S. Army and literally given away for free as a promotional device. And I wondered if they were like keeping track of the people who were scoring really high in order to put the focus of recruitment on them.
I guess that's another reason for the offshoring of these manufacturing jobs. So these poor suckers have no other employment options except to join the military.
It's an economic draft. It really is. And Claire and I got to see that up close and personal a few years ago. We were going down to a restaurant that, well, it's not there anymore. And it's located in this same part of the mall where all the military recruiters are. And there were a whole bunch of kids just standing there. And we just stopped and talked with them. And they'd all signed up for the Air Force. They were waiting for the bus to take them wherever they were going to go. And we expressed our concern about, with so much war going on, was this really a best option? And they all basically said the same thing. There are no jobs here for us, and it's either sign up with the military or be homeless.
Yeah, that's sad. Well, okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just thinking about appointments, and just out of curiosity, what do you think Alan Keyes? Do you think he might fit in the administration or not?
What position do you have him in mind for?
Well, he's conservative, and he seems like a pretty bright guy. I'm not sure where, but it just seems to me his intelligence, he's not... I think he's just a pretty sharp guy. I've heard him talk, and I think, he'd fit in somewhere. I'm not sure where, but...
Well, there are only so many positions to hand on out in the cabinet. In fact, Trump is already talking about removing the cabinet post of Director of National Intelligence and just interact, directly with the intelligence agencies. But Trump can have as many special advisors as he wants. In fact, there's even a term for it in the White House. It's called the kitchen cabinet, which is the people the president will meet with for breakfast in the White House and sit around, and it's a very informal ad hoc group. And I imagine that Donald Trump will probably invite a lot of people to take part in that because, again, it's all very unofficial, and you can just bounce ideas off of them. Keyes might fit in very well there.
Has Jesse Ventura's name been out there yet or not?
Say again?
Sure. Has Jesse Ventura's name been brought up at all?
Unfortunately, no. Well, Jesse Ventura may be just a little bit too colorful for Donald Trump's taste.
Okay, one last one. I know you may think, well, he's a little bit old, but he is a sharp guy, and he definitely knows the Middle East and world affairs really well, and I would say Noam Chomsky, at least as an advisor. What do you think about that?
From my own personal taste, he's a little too pro-Israel, and I'm not going to argue against him because of his age, simply because I'm getting older myself. But he is very inflexible in his thinking. And I think one quality that Donald Trump is going to be looking for, or should be looking for, in all of his appointments are people who are willing to be flexible and accommodate some of the major changes that this country needs to go through if it's going to avoid a collapse.
Well, I hope this whole meeting with Romney is nothing. I really do, because I just can't understand. I think Trump will lose a lot of people's support and respect from people who voted for him, batted for him. Why is he talking to the guy who used personal attacks on him? I have no clue, but I don't know. I think he's going to lose some fans, some base.
Well, Trump has got a lot of favors to pay back to his supporters, and probably he's getting phone calls from his top donors saying at least meet with Mitt Romney. And so Trump has met with Mitt Romney, but it doesn't look to me like he's very seriously considering Mitt Romney for Secretary of State, primarily because Mitt Romney does not have any foreign policy background whatsoever. He's a classic money junkie. Anybody who's seen that film when Mitt Romney came to town knows that. But, Trump does owe a lot of people for the support that they gave him to become president, and he's going to have to pay those favors back. And very often it's somebody calling up saying, at least meet with X, Y, Z. And so he's had the meeting, and he comes back and says, I had the meeting, I'm not impressed with the guy, and we're going to go with Petraeus or something. Anyway, we've got to take a break for commercials.
I hope that's the situation.
All right, we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Peter in Los Angeles, welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, Michael, can you hear me, Mike?
I can. There's some problems with the line, but I can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to put my 2 cents on the Secretary of State thing, appointments, and I'm not for Mitt Romney at all. However, at least he ran a business that was international, which is more foreign policy experience than Hillary had. However, I think he's totally unsuited. I would not pick him. And I have an issue with American foreign policy and diplomacy. We really don't have diplomacy. Our diplomacy is the Pentagon. It's
well, that's what Trump is going to. That's what Trump has promised he's going to change. He's already out there talking about going back to being friends with Russia, going back to being friends with China. That's what he campaigned on, and every indication is that is what he wants to do. Because he understands, peace through commerce is preferable to blowing everything up.
And I wholly agree with him, and I hope to God he's going to do that. But I think Petraeus, as a general running, it's the wrong message, and his first inclination would be to use the force anyways. He wasn't even all that successful a general, frankly. But
hang on. Okay, Petraeus is not in charge. Petraeus' job is going on out and interfacing with the rest of the world, but policy will be set by Trump. When we find out that Hillary Clinton was out there with all the stuff that was going on in Benghazi, the indications are, she did not do that on her own. The smuggling of weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, she didn't just up and do that all on her own authority. That came down from the White House. And Petraeus may have his own opinions about what's going on, but ultimately his job is to carry out the policies set by the president, or he'll be fired.
Mike, I have a suggestion I would love to see. I know it will never happen, but for Secretary of State, I'd like to see either Mearsheimer or Walt, the guys the realist school of American foreign policy that wrote the book on the Israeli lobby and American foreign policy. I would love to see one of those guys appointed as the Secretary of State.
That would have been a good choice. I was actually rooting for Tulsi Gabbard from right here in Hawaii because she's very pro-peace. She has been very vocal about opposition to the war, which is a very courageous stance to take in a state with such a high military presence and so dependent on military spending as Hawaii is. And she's quite a lady. I'm trying to get her on the show here. She's heading up to the Dakota Access Pipeline protest this weekend. So, she's out there being an activist, and, I've never met her, but already I have a lot of respect for her.
How about, and I do too, I think of all the people actually been mentioned, she was the best. How about Cynthia McKinney?
Would love to see.
Great too.
I would love to see Cynthia McKinney have some kind of a position. I was kind of hoping that Trump might convince Ron Paul to come out of retirement and make him Secretary of the Treasury. But again, when we're looking at Donald Trump's appointments, this is where a lot of the favors that he owes to his supporters for this campaign get paid back. So we're not going to agree with all of his appointments. I certainly don't. But he does owe a lot of people, and he's got to make good on those promises.
I'm with you, Mike. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Getting on back to the news, those members of Hillary's fanatics, I think we need a new name for the Hillaryites, are still out there screaming that Hillary should be president because she won the popular vote. And you keep telling them the election system isn't set up on popular vote, or Trump would have campaigned in just 4 states and still would have won. And in any case, you cannot claim that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote when there were so many illegal immigrants voting. So Bill Mitchell comes on out, and he's got a comment about the corporate media, because the corporate media is out there saying, oh, no, there wasn't a problem with illegal immigrants voting. There's no way they could vote in the election. And, this idea that Russia can hack our elections, but the illegal immigrants can't vote. There are fewer barriers to voting than to getting across the border, and they got across the border. And if they're being lured in with promises of all kinds of free stuff, if they will vote for Hillary Clinton, they're going to go ahead and do that. I mean, by definition, these people are criminals the moment they step across that border. We got to take another break here for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And over at Newsmax, there was this article in which Ed Klein comes on out and says the only reason that Hillary and Jill Stein asked for a recount was because all the people close to Hillary, Huma Abedin, Chelsea Clinton, Sidney Blumenthal, basically said it would lift her spirits to ask for a recount. Poor Hillary is looking weepy. She looks 10 years older. She's very whiny. She's been drinking heavily. Poor baby. And that's the whole reason for the recount. No, what they were trying to do was hide the real agenda, which was to tangle up Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in Florida 2000-style legal wrangles so they would be unable to send electors to the Electoral College December 19th. That would narrow the gap between Trump and Hillary, and it would only have taken 15 defecting electors to steal the White House for Hillary Clinton. And, according to InfoWars, in turn citing TV host David Pakman, Hillary already had 15 electors that were supposed to be voting for Trump, ready to defect and vote for her. That's how close it came. But because of the judges' decisions in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, it looks like that plan has fallen apart. Now, there was an article here pointing out how Jill Stein hired a DNC lawyer for the Michigan recount effort. And they point out it does look really, really bad, but it's even worse than that because under campaign law, it is actually illegal for the campaigns to collude with each other against a third party. And apparently the GOP in one of these states has already filed a formal complaint with the Federal Elections Commission. Now, Donald Trump has asked Obama's appointed federal prosecutor, Preet Bharara, to stay on in the administration. And Bharara has been very busy investigating Anthony Weiner, the Clinton Foundation. And so it looks like Donald Trump, contrary to that fiction peddled by the New York Times, Donald Trump is going to criminally investigate Hillary Clinton. And it's a reminder that Donald Trump's appointments are not based on ideology. He's going for competency. He's trying to find the people who are best going to be able to do the job he needs them to do. He's thinking like a business manager, not like a politician. And that, to me, is a very, very positive sign. All right, let's take a phone call here. Steve in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, where's Julian Assange?
Packing his luggage over at the Ecuadorian embassy, I would imagine.
Well, nobody's heard from him for 33 days now, 35 days.
No, he's been keeping a low profile while the United Nations went through this whole resolution that he should be freed. And Great Britain was trying to appeal it, and the UN slapped them down. So the United Nations has basically ordered Julian Assange to be set free immediately, and I imagine, Assange will be out there doing the media circuit here any time now. But I imagine he's packing his bags over there at that embassy. I just hope he stays out of small airplanes and suburban Washington, D.C. parks and avoids walking by vans in the street with the engines running.
All right, Mike, I sure hope so.
Okay? All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Now then, apparently Hillary's spoiled brat people, the Hillary-lites, are still throwing tantrums. They're still attacking my server. They're still behaving like spoiled children who are having to squeeze their Play-Doh in the safe spaces because they didn't get what they wanted here. And apparently over in Kansas City, a mob of black teens apparently assaulted a middle-aged white man who they suspected of voting for Donald Trump. And it's been classed as a hate crime. They just seriously beat him up. Apparently a Navy veteran's home has been vandalized and torched by Black Lives Matter because he was a Trump supporter. So we're beginning to see the true face of the Hillaryites, as it were. Now, getting on back to the investigations, and Trey Gowdy, I know we all wanted him as Attorney General, but he can still do the job he's doing from right where he's sitting right now. And every indication is he's going to go on. Representative Jim Jordan has vowed to investigate Hillary Clinton regardless of what Trump says. Now, apparently Jordan read that New York Times story and didn't get the follow-up that the reporters on that story just made it up that Trump was not going to criminally investigate Hillary Clinton. She needs time to heal. I don't want revenge, blah, 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 blah. The New York Times reporters just made it up. They misquoted Donald Trump. They asked him point blank in the interview, are you taking the investigations off the table? Donald Trump said no. They didn't quote that. They just took the line about not wanting revenge and the investigations not being a priority, and they turned it into that headline, Donald Trump will not criminally investigate Hillary Clinton. But remember, the New York Times is the real news. And we here at WhatReallyHappened.com and Republic Broadcasting, we're the fake news. Now, Conservative Tribune is reporting that CNN anchor Chris Cuomo, on the air, has basically declared essentially a vendetta against Trump during his broadcast, saying that he will not accept a Donald Trump presidency, that he is going to oppose and undermine Donald Trump's presidency from his throne at CNN. And Donald Trump was right. We had that quote yesterday where Trump is saying CNN has gotten worse ever since Trump won the election. And CNN is now on the attack against the independent media. And for some reason, they have a real burr under the saddle when it comes to Alex Jones, who they're describing now as a Sandy Hook 9/11 conspiracy theorist. And they're linking Donald Trump to him in an effort to try and tarnish him, not realizing that most Americans now understand that the official story for 9/11 is bogus. A lot of Americans understand the official story about Sandy Hook is bogus. In fact, at this point, more and more Americans are realizing that pretty much everything the U.S. government and the corporate media said is totally bogus. And here's where it gets really weird. There's a YouTube video out, we linked to it, in which CNN is trying to claim that Alex Jones is a leader of the KKK. I mean, that's the shark right there. CNN meet shark, shark meet CNN. What are they going to do next? Alex Jones passes gas in elevators. Alex Jones has overdue library books. Alex Jones takes the last cookie. I mean, they've really become almost a caricature. If we saw this on Saturday Night Live, we'd realize what a joke it was. Now, there's another article that came on out over in Zero Hedge where Martin Armstrong, his numbers that he is looking at is saying less than 1 in 3 Americans trust the corporate media. There are polls indicating that it's actually much lower than that, but even less than 1 in 3, that's bad. And he's out there saying that if the corporate media continues this adversarial position against the independent media, if they keep trying to prop up Hillary and attacking Donald Trump, they're only going to doom themselves. The younger generation isn't buying newspapers and magazines. They're getting everything online, and they're coming to the independent media to get it. The corporate media is beginning to fade away. The corporate media is about to become as relevant as FM radio. Now, turning over to the war zones, there's a lot going on. It's still not getting what I would consider adequate coverage on the corporate TV news. The main road into eastern Aleppo, Costello Road, is now in the hands of the Syrian forces, which means they can get humanitarian supplies in there. Putin can get his mobile hospitals into there. The civilians who want to leave eastern Aleppo can get out if they can dodge the bullets being fired by those U.S.-backed terrorists. But very clearly, the momentum has shifted. Syria and Russia have the initiative. And it's only a matter of time. We're now hearing that Moscow is actually in secret negotiations with the Syrian opposition to stop the fighting in Aleppo. And I'm sure what Putin is basically saying is, look, you're going to lose. You can quit now, and a lot more of you will still be alive than if you fight this out to its foregone conclusion. And apparently he is finding a receptive audience over there in the Syrian opposition. We are now seeing a story that also came out of the Duran.com, where Russia is negotiating with Turkey for the surrender of jihadis in East Aleppo. So all of a sudden, things are evening out between Russia and Turkey. Now, remember earlier in the week, Erdogan was out there saying that the aim of Turkey's forces in Syria was to take out Bashar al-Assad, which provoked a tremendous response from Russia, a demand for an explanation. And just yesterday I said, in reading the transcript, the translated transcript of his speech, I got the impression that Erdogan was just mouthing off and not thinking about what he was really saying. But today, Erdogan has now clarified that in reality, Turkey's military are in Syria only to target the terrorists, and no, they are not out there to topple Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. So I did predict yesterday he was going to back down, and he just did. Now, Putin has given the State of the Nation speech, Russia's equivalent of the State of the Union, and reiterated that Russia does not want to have conflict with anyone, but they will act to protect their interests. They don't want enemies. What they want, what they need, are more friends. And he made a special shout-out to the incoming administration of Donald Trump to say, we're going to work with you and partner with you to fight terrorism, most of which I expect will vanish once Obama is out of office. So it's all moving in a good direction. Interestingly enough, Egypt is starting to make noises about getting a little more involved in Syria on the side of Assad. And normally Egypt has a policy very much like that of Iran. They don't like to get involved with other countries. They don't attack other countries. Israel has attacked them a couple of times, but that's basically it. But all of a sudden, Egypt is starting to deploy jets and cargo planes to the province of Hama. And they're providing transport planes to help the Syrian army to redeploy cargo and personnel. So Egypt is coming on in kind of a support mode, but it's certainly going to work to Assad's advantage in bringing this whole attempted overthrow by the U.S. to an end. Now, a lot of people were very, very upset over Ukraine planning missile tests. They'd issued NOTAM saying that they were going to be firing rockets over Crimea. Everybody was concerned about that, the possibility that one of these rockets could malfunction and come down on Crimea. Well, Ukraine has backed down on that one, and they have now said their two-day missile drill starting today will be shifted away from the airspace over Crimea. They're just going to fly them over the Black Sea. In this story, however, which I linked to the Reuters version, Reuters is still pushing that whole thing. You know, Ukraine is sidestepping a possible confrontation with Russia, which annexed the peninsula in 2014. No, Russia did not annex Crimea. Shame on you, Reuters. Double shame for standing up there and claiming you're the real media and we're the fake media. What happened, one more time, the Crimeans held a referendum and voted to secede from Ukraine following the U.S.-backed coup d'etat in Kiev. Crimea has the right to do that under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Then after they had declared their independence, they held another referendum in which they voted to ask Russia to merge with their republics. That one had landslide, 90% plus. And that's what happened. Crimea didn't want to be part of the U.S. empire anymore. They broke away, as they're legally entitled to do under international law, and then they said, hey, can we join with you guys? And Putin said yes. That's what happened. There was no annexation. Reuters seems to think that if they keep repeating this at you over and over and over and over and over and over again, that you will just someday believe it. It's amazing. All right, story out of inside Syria. And they start off mentioning about how CENTCOM announced the death of an American soldier in Syria last week. And then they basically take the Pentagon to task for their claim that this is the first time a U.S. service member lost their life in combat inside Syria. And questions that claim, given that U.S. troops have been illegally present in Syria quite a long time. Now, if you are my age, and I feel sorry for you if you are, you will remember how we, the American people, didn't learn just how many of our kids died in Vietnam until after it was all over. The numbers were always low. Oh, we lost a few, it's a tragedy, but it's only a few. And then after it was all over, they finally came out and let us know that some 60,000 Americans got killed in Vietnam. That's why that war memorial in Washington, D.C. is as big as it is. They had to fit all the names on there. Now, over in Great Britain, Parliament has basically voted down a motion on whether former Prime Minister Tony Blair should be held to account for allegedly lying Britain into the Iraq War. And the members of Parliament ruled that Tony Blair did not deceive Parliament, therefore there should be no investigation. They're actually telling the truth. Parliament knew exactly what was going on. Tony Blair deceived the British people. And he should be held to account for that. Now, let's get into the economy because we're seeing this just rush toward the cashless society. And over in Italy, one of their banks, Modi, is already taking all currency over the equivalent of $7 U.S. out of circulation. And what they want to do is move all transactions onto the bank plastic cards. Same thing they're talking about all over Europe and here in the United States of America. Why? Because the banks will charge you a fee for handling your money for you. You don't have to pay a fee when you reach into your pocket and pull out a piece of paper or a coin and pay for what you want. The bank wants to charge you a fee for everything that you do. And they're talking now a transaction tax. Now that all transactions go through the bank, they will tax you on them. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're just now getting word that Donald Trump has chosen retired Marine General James Mattis to be the Secretary of Defense. And Mattis is an experienced soldier. He's been in battle. He's led operations all across the Middle East. And I think that's a good thing, having somebody who knows what war is really like, what the horror of it is really like, being in charge. I think it's going to be a good thing. Remember what a disaster Donald Aspartame is good for you Rumsfeld was under George W. Bush? All right, let's go to the phones here. John in Barbados, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I think people misunderstood my statements about Trey Gowdy. Yes, I did support him for the Attorney General, and I said that if Donald Trump picked him, he would go some way to convince me that he was real. But, however, I also said at the end of that communication that I would have rather see Trey Gowdy left in the Congress as the attack dog because he's doing such a great job there. So, you know, I think people misunderstand what I was trying to say.
Well,
but there again, that's...
Yeah, you know, that's water under the bridge at this point, and now we just move forward and look at what's going on. Obviously, with the judges' decisions in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, this ploy to steal the White House at the Electoral College seems to be in serious, serious trouble. And but again, it's too soon for the hats and confetti, because it is very obvious that Hillary and her people, the Hillaryites, are going to do whatever it takes to get that White House. And that's why right now I feel that Donald Trump is in, he's in grave danger. and I hope his security is really, really keeping an eye on him, and I hope Trump is wearing his Kevlar Armani, because I would say it's probably an even money bet that somewhere between now and the 19th of December there will be an attempt on him.
Well, I'm General Mattis now. This is the general that didn't know where the Afghan-Pakistan border was, and my friend in Australia offered to send him his GPS to show him where it was when General Mattis was in charge and those 26 Pakistani soldiers were killed. So I'm not convinced about General Mattis, but okay, we'll see how he does. Most of the time I'm reserving judgment until I see Donald Trump actually in the White House, because I think there's still some hurdles to cross, notwithstanding, assassination attempts and this stupid...
John, we're almost out of time. I want to ask you a question. When you first arrived in Barbados, did you know where all the major roads were?
Absolutely not, but with GPS it's easy.
Okay, but the thing is, GPS, Mattis in the fog of war and everything, I don't think that one incident really, it feels like, everybody can make a goof, and I don't think we need to make a big deal out of it. Anyway, listen, we got to let you go, do a break for station identification. Got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2, and we're going to go right to the telephones. Mo in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you taking my call. I have a observation or something happened to me, and a quick question, and I'll hang up or whatever and get your response. And I get a lot of callers. I got banned from my first website from CNBC a couple weeks ago when I called John Harwood a prostitute, and they banned me from that stupid website, which I was very proud of. But I started thinking with this prop list, which I was very grateful. I mean, it gave me some good hits. What do you think of somehow getting everybody together, some kind of forum with everybody that's on that list, and taking their top sponsors and boycotting them for like a certain amount of time?
I think that would be a very good thing to do. I think that would be an absolutely excellent idea if somebody. The corporate media is sensitive to their advertisers. That's why certain stories get killed. I mean, look what Monsanto did out in California during Prop 37. They literally went around to every TV station and every newspaper and said, if you do not editorialize against GMO labeling, we will cancel all of our ad contracts with you. And it worked. How many
people do you think of those 100 websites, whatever? I mean, that could be over 1 million people, I'm sure, right?
You mean on the list that was on Prop or not?
Yeah, if you took all the listeners, added them all up, yours, Alex Jones, everybody.
Oh, millions.
Millions. I mean, those people would love to just boycott their top 3 advertisers. I mean, that would hit them hard.
Yes, it would. It's a good idea.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. I appreciate your show. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Errol in the Netherlands. And Errol, what's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Nui Nui.
Nui Nui.
Nui Nui. I just want to say Donald Trump has not been even in the office. And people are saying, oh, you are going to get some Goldman Sachs in there and this and that. You are the same. No. What I want to say to the people that have selected Donald Trump is this. You need to work with these people. This is the system that we are in now. They need to work. We need to do business. It's like, I can give you an example. A junkie can never go from one day to the other day and be clean. So we need to work together. We need to make intelligent decisions and work together to do business with each other. And when I see that on CNN or NSBC or whatever, and all the people that are saying in the forums and in the blogs, yes, you see, he's the same, he's a Zionist and everything. I'm like, he had not ever get a chance.
Well, Errol, let me clarify something for you. Let me clarify something for you that you need to keep in mind. A lot of the people that are posting in those blogs and forums are paid to do that. They're not ordinary. Yeah, there are companies, public relations companies that openly advertise, for a fee. They will load up discussion boards with posters to post whatever the agenda is. We know the U.S. government actually created some software where a single disinformation operative can have hundreds and hundreds of fake identities on Facebook and Google and all the rest of it and just pour this stuff out. We caught them on Twitter, posting the exact same message over and over again underneath thousands and thousands of different names and identities.
Yep, I know. And that is the interesting part of it. They made software, and what you said, there are paid shills for that to do it. He has not even been in office. So give this man a chance. Again, I will say this again. A junkie, let's say a money junkie, does not get clean from one day to another. So we need to see, he must work with those people because that's the system where we are living now in. He cannot say like, okay, throw everything there and there. That's war. That's not good.
No, it's not good at all.
Exactly. And you need to have a dialogue with them. You need to speak with them. You need to see what interest there is. We need to see what interest there is for all of us.
Well, Errol, it's a noble idea. It's a noble idea, but here is what's going on. In the case of Hillary's supporters and Hillary, you're dealing with this drug money corrupted cartel that has had an iron grip on the throat of the country for 30 years, going back to the Iran-Contra scandal, and probably before that, all the way back to Vietnam when they were smuggling heroin into the U.S. inside the body bags of our dead soldiers. And these are people that you're not going to be able to communicate with because they're coming from a position of being afraid of jail. They're fanatics about their ideologies. When we look at all these Hillary supporters who are still out there vandalizing Navy veterans' homes, beating up people they think are Trump voters, you're dealing with brown shirt fanatics. And it may be a waste of time to try and engage with them rationally and logically. They're not rational, primarily because the Hillary Clinton campaign was being run as a personality cult. And that's what all of her followers are. They're behaving just like people who are mind slaves of any kind of a cult leader. Anyway, Errol, got to let you go. Got a bunch of calls I need to get to. Got a bunch of news I need to get to. We're going to switch real quick. Oh, first of all, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network here, and then we're going to talk to Frank in London. Aloha, Frank. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Michael. Just to follow up on two topics, how government are so over-bloated with staff. And the other one is, I think people are jumping to conclusions about Trump too early. I think what it is people need to understand the entrenched system and the entrenched personalities, that rotten core that is in Washington. You can't really just sweep it overnight. It's a lot more. It's a lot more work to be done. It's a lot more sophisticated
I'm in agreement.
than we realize.
I'm in agreement, and I've been telling everybody ever since Trump won the election. You're not going to sit back and relax. Anybody who thinks Donald Trump is just going to go into Washington D.C. and make everything all better all by himself, you're living in a dream world. Our work is really just now beginning. We're going to have a president who understands what the real problems of this country are. But we Americans are going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder with him and create this incredible wave of political support for the changes that he needs to make. And we're going to have to stand there and glare through those windows in all those offices of the senators and the representatives and send them a very clear message. You remember you're supposed to represent us, not Israel, not Monsanto, not Big Pharma, not Wall Street. Okay, you work for us. And anybody who fails to remember that and abide by that, we're going to do to you next election what we did to Hillary this election. And that's a message that they're going to be receptive to right now. Because this election in 2016 shocked everybody. They thought they had a lock on the political system, and now they're realizing All of their names are written on those office doors in Congress in dry erase marker, and we, the people, have got the rag.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you have the same problem in the U.S., but I work for local government, and people low down the strata like myself, we're getting more and more and more responsibilities, more and more cutbacks, yet you've got people who are supposed to be head of service, and all these sort of people getting about 70, 80,000 a year. And to find out what they actually do, I think you have to resurrect Sherlock Holmes or something.
Yeah.
That's what's taking place.
Yeah, we do have that problem here in the United States.
Goodness me. Okay, Mike, thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, up in Canada, as you remember, there was this lawsuit that has been floating through the court system regarding the fact that the charter for the Bank of Canada mandated the providing of interest-free loans to the Canadian government for infrastructure, and how the Canadian government a while back just changed the rules and started borrowing their money from private banks at interest and sticking the Canadian people with those interest payments. Basically, there's a new lawsuit now that wants to restore the power for the Bank of Canada to create sovereign money, the system that we started with, because the Bank of Canada is technically owned by the people of Canada. It's not a privately owned central bank. It functions like a central bank, loaning the public currency into circulation. And they want to get back to a model of where the public currency is managed as a public utility. So they're forcing through on that. And the government of Canada, of course, is trying to keep the Canadian people from understanding any of this stuff going on. Back when we were talking about the Comer lawsuit, which was to once again have infrastructure loans interest-free from the Bank of Canada to the government, that one, the Canadian media were told, you won't report this. And anybody who was posting any stories about it outside of Canada, their URLs were being blocked at the Canadian border. These private central bankers love their scam, and they're afraid. They're just as afraid of losing what they've got as the corporate media and the narcocracy. Now, there's a very alarming trend out there. If you watch a lot of TV, you've probably been seeing a lot of car commercials, and the prices are just amazing. If anybody actually had money, it would be a great time to be buying cars. But, of course, they don't want to sell you a car for cash. What they want is to come in and either get you on a lease payment or a bank loan, because that's the real value of the product being sold, is not the product itself, but the debt it creates. You'd be amazed how little the physical car itself actually costs to manufacture. But the goal is to get you to take out another loan to keep you a slave to the banks here. But like everything else with our economy, it's all a Ponzi scheme. It's all a pyramid, and the pyramid is crumbling. Right now, 6 million Americans have stopped paying their car loans. Wall Street's calling it a significant concern. And one of the reasons it's a significant concern is they went through the same stupid mistake with car loans that they did with real estate back in 2008, the subprime. They had subprime car loans. They were getting them on out there. Same mistakes they made with the breaking the securitization chain. Those who were making the loans didn't care if they were going to be repaid because the loans were bundled up and sold off as investment devices. They never learn from their mistakes, because every time one of these mistakes blows up, they don't pay for it. You do. And now we're looking at another one. Same thing with the student loans, but there may be a bit of a break on that. According to a story coming out of Post News, the U.S. is going to forgive at least $108 billion in student debt in the coming years. And that would be a really good thing. And it's inevitable they're going to have to do that. Because college, like the cars, like everything else, stopped being about the product and all about getting people further into debt. You go to college today, you're going to be indoctrinated with all the things the liberals want you to believe, and you don't learn any skills. Remember that story we ran a couple of weeks ago, that evaluating our millennial generation in terms of actually being able to find work in this modern technological age, they declared the U.S. millennial generation virtually useless. They're really good at going on out there and working for political campaigns and stuff, but they don't really have a lot of skills. It was all about plunging them onto that debt hook. Now, GoPro is talking about having to cut jobs and shutting down some of their services. GoPro is that little tiny action sports camera. They're very, very, very popular, and they're actually very, very good devices. But they did a big investment on an aircraft to carry the cameras called the Karma, and apparently it has been crashed. It's actually a drone. Apparently there have been a lot of crashes. They've had to recall this, and as a result, they're in a little bit of trouble. Now, there was an article that came on out over at SBNation.com, a eulogy for Radio Shack, the panicked and half-dead retail empire. And it's written by a former Radio Shack employee talking about how as Radio Shack got into more and more trouble, the conditions for the workers got worse and worse. They point out how Radio Shack, in order to beat Black Friday, was actually open Thanksgiving Day, and the employees didn't have a choice to opt out on that. And I know that a lot of this stuff was going on because before the Radio Shack at the bottom of the hill closed down, I was friends with a lot of people in there, and they were saying the same thing. It was not a good place to work. It stopped being a good place to shop, and they got into trouble. And where Radio Shack made its strategic mistake, and I've commented on this before, Radio Shack built its success by focusing on a customer base of electronics hobbyists, people who wanted to build things, people who were into ham radio or CB radio or any of that stuff. And you needed the bits and parts and the antennas and the rotators and all that stuff. Everybody knew Radio Shack was where you were going to go. And they were very, very successful. I used to love Radio Shack. And then a few years ago, they decided to change their business model. And they abandoned their original customer base of electronics hobbyists. They still had a few things in there so they could call themselves Radio Shack, but it was mostly junk. And they put most of their effort into selling the exact same consumer electronics that were being sold by dozens of other retail chains. And they could never capture a significant part of the market. And that's where they made their mistake. They forgot to stick with the knitting. That was a phrase that Messrs. Hewlett and Packard used to use when they were running Hewlett-Packard back when it was a really successful company and known for the absolute top-shelf quality products they put on out. And people kept coming on and saying, oh, you got to diversify, you got to go into this and go. No, we're going to stick with the knitting. We're going to stick with what we know works, not get dreams of grandeur. Apparently, everybody's having to cut back, including Sears. Sears is in trouble. They may not survive this Christmas holiday shopping season. And I'm seeing this article about how their service department, this is from governmentslaves.com, their service department has been cut back so much. Sears customers who are buying home appliances are having to wait for weeks at a time without the hot water, without the heaters they bought working, the refrigerators break down. It will be weeks before a service person gets on out there. And that is not a way to build customer loyalty. All right, let's take a phone call. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I hope you and Claire are doing well. Before I start, I was wondering if you could just Google an image. It's called World Money versus World Debt. And you'll see, a little graph there. And it's, I'd like you to look at it before I kind of talk about it a little bit. But anyway, as far as Canada goes with the Bank of Canada, I believe that lawsuit is over now. It was struck down, and the Comer, it's on comer.org. But Pierre Elliott Trudeau definitely sold out the Canadians in 1974, getting into the G7. And coincidentally, Russia and Putin, wants to take control of their private central bank, and they get kicked out of the G8, which is now the G7 again. But it's about 1.3 or 1.4 trillion dollars in debt charges for the federal debt in this country that have been paid out so far. And municipal and provincial governments would access Bank of Canada for, socio infrastructure and, all that sort of thing, exactly what you talk about.
Anyway, I'm looking at the graph, the total world money and debt, and to know.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, it is, except that we understand private central banks, by design, create more debt than money with which to pay the debt, to keep us all their debt slaves. This chart documents that. Anyway, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with immigration and Europe. Now that this little misunderstanding regarding Erdogan and Assad has been sorted out following a phone call from Putin, it does look like Turkey is, in fact, pivoting over to Russia. They don't want to be part of the European Union anymore. And it looks like Turkey is starting to gather boats to start shipping that huge backlog, if you will, of migrants that are inside Turkey now over to Greece. Now, the European Union at this point doesn't want them anymore. So what's going to happen? Is the EU going to start attacking Turkey's ships in the Mediterranean? I think we ought to take all those migrants and send them back to their homes and give George Soros the bill. Because this was all his idea. The open society. Now, there's another article that came out of Investment Watch blog about how Europe is now filled with populist breakouts following the success of Brexit and Trump. Oh my goodness, the people are deciding for themselves how they want to live. Horrors, horrors. Now, the President of the European Commission, which is the Executive Committee of the European Union, has now ordered EU member states to avoid any more referendums on leaving the EU because it's on the edge of collapse already. And it may be too late, because over in Denmark, leaders of the Danish People's Party just met with former UKIP leader Nigel Farage and signaled the party is considering pushing for a formal referendum to have Denmark leave the European Union. Now, if Renzi's referendum this weekend fails, we may see the EU collapse, mostly from the euro collapsing. And there will be a lot of chaos because there's going to be a backlash against the migrants. We could see Europe literally descend into chaos, all because George Soros was living out his fantasy of one planet, one government, one golden throne of planet Earth, and all of the world's people blended together. Now, turning to situations here in the United States, as I mentioned before, Hawaii's Representative Tulsi Gabbard is heading to the Dakota Access Pipeline protest at Standing Rock. And apparently there are some 2,000 veterans are expected to show up and basically plant themselves between the protesters and the police in order to discourage the police and the private security guards from engaging in violent behavior against the protesters. And hopefully that will calm things down. But as of the last word, despite threats to sue people bringing in food and water, threats of a forced eviction, all of the rest of it, the protesters are vowing they will stay put. Because this is their home. And they're standing up to the corporations because it isn't just their water supply that's at risk if that pipeline breaks. That water flows into 4 other states that could be contaminated if there were a major break and a leak. Oh, and by the way, the federal government has just approved yet another pipeline called Nexus that's going to go through Ohio. So it will be interesting to see how Americans stand up opposed to the Nexus pipeline while remaining kind of cool about the pipeline going over the Sioux reservations. Now, out in California, the California voters voted through, or at least they've been told they voted through, new gun control measures. Proposition 63, which basically says ammunition has to be bought through licensed ammunition dealers and reported to the Department of Justice. They want to know if anybody's buying way too many bullets. Lost and stolen firearms and ammunition have to be reported to law enforcement, like gun owners aren't doing that already. More about this when we come back from these words from our sponsors. Aloha America, welcome back to the show here, and we're talking about California voters approved a new rather strict gun measure, or the California voters have been told they've approved this new strict gun control measure, Proposition 63, where ammunition has to be sold by licensed ammunition dealers, and all ammunition sales are reported to the Department of Justice. Lost or stolen firearms and ammunition have to be reported to law enforcement, like we're not already doing that. Those convicted of stealing a firearm will be prohibited from possessing firearms. Okay. And basically procedures will be established for laws prohibiting firearm possession by felons and violent criminals. I thought that already existed. And the Department of Justice will need to provide information about prohibited people to the Federal National Instant Criminal Background Check System. California just fell off my places to move to list. And what's going to happen here, this is going to inconvenience law-abiding gun owners only. What they have just done is made ammunition another smuggler product to be brought across the border along with all of those illegal drugs. Anybody can get a gun in California. All you got to do is go down to Mexico, join the Sinaloa cartel, and the U.S. government will give you a military-style weapon. All right, let's take a phone call. Jeff in Toronto, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Doing fine.
I was just calling because I read an article earlier today regarding a comment you were making earlier about the Bank of Canada lawsuit that was going on. And that lawsuit 100% has not gone through yet. It's going to court on the 7th of December in Toronto here.
Yeah, that's what I thought. This was not the Comer lawsuit. Yeah. This is a new one.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to court in a few days, or less than a week. So I just wanted to call to confirm that, to let people know. I mean, it's really important just because people don't seem to understand, a lot of your listeners would, but most people don't seem to understand that the greatest contributor to the national debt is interest on the debt, and that comes from central banks getting money and from interest. And so when you can't afford social programs or the government's need of money, it's because the fact that all this compound interest that they're paying and they can't afford it anymore. So that's where these problems are arising from. I mean, politicians are oftentimes blaming social programs or entitlement programs for the fact that they're insolvent. When that's not true, a lot of these programs are solvent, but they're just being rated to pay for various other things. But the truth of the matter is the largest contributor to the debt is actually interest on it, and the whole thing's basically a huge scam. So
it is a scam, and they've been playing it for about 300 years now.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if there wasn't interest on our national debt, then just on the taxes paid since Vietnam, we would have paid off the national debt completely. But we never pay down the principal. We're always making payments on the interest only, and Congress goes along with it because Wall Street and the Federal Reserve and that whole financial scam industry are very, very generous donors to various political campaigns.
Yeah, and one of the things that separates the Canadian banks from other ones is that actually the Central Bank of Canada is actually a public bank. It's not a privately run bank like the Federal Reserve. So, and they have ignored their charter, which stipulates that the government has the possibility, if they wanted to borrow money at interest-free for large projects or infrastructure projects. But as you said, a lot of these politicians are corrupted, And that's why they're not lifting a finger, and they're actually opposing this lawsuit, whereas the morality would suggest that you would actually help this along to help the people out. So
they're not interested in helping the people out. They're interested in lining their own pocket. That's what they're doing.
Exactly right. Yep. So I just wanted to call you, that lawsuit has not gone ahead. It's going ahead on the 7th of December. So I wanted to call and clarify that for you.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot.
Yeah, and I didn't really have much else to add. Love your show, and take care of yourself.
All right, I certainly will. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Now then, I just had a story come across the desk. Apparently, the House of Representatives has passed a new bill aimed at thwarting Russia's influence over people and governments. They want to tackle political interference by Russia on a global scale because, gosh darn it, that's our job here in the United States of America. We're supposed to be interfering in other countries. We're supposed to be overthrowing other governments. We're supposed to be propagandizing the world. No, Russia's trying to cut in on our action here. We're at the point right now where there's absolutely nothing the government or the corporate media can do that's going to reverse the trend. Everything they do just makes it more obvious they're in trouble. They know they're in trouble. They're panicking. It's amazing. All righty. Now then, a lot of interesting things going on in the world right now. Apparently, that Colombian plane crash, there actually was one survivor, amazingly enough. And the story now is it looks like a very tragic case of pilot error because the plane had a limited fuel range, and the pilot did radio that the plane had run out of fuel just before it crashed. And the story I'm getting now is that the plane was scheduled to make a fuel stop at an airport, and for whatever reason, the pilot decided he didn't need to do it, and he guessed wrong. Just amazing. As you know, major tornadoes here in the southern part of the United States, 5 dead, a lot of homes damaged, mobile homes in trees and power outages, which, yeah, we get that. That the United States is the tornado capital of the world because of the confluence of the warm water in the Gulf of Mexico, the cold air coming down from the north, caroming off the Rockies and hitting that warm flow from the Gulf at cross angles. And that's why we have so many tornadoes in this country. And and as a matter of fact, I just got a notification on my cell phone. We're under a flash flood watch here in Hawaii. We got a lot of rain coming down on us as well. So, this seems like a good opportunity to talk about human-caused global warming. And we're on the warpath here because it's yet another corporate media, government, politician scam. So we're looking now at a story. This is coming out of the Daily Express over in Great Britain. Britain is now set for the coldest winter in 6 years. They're expecting heavy snow starting over the coming weekend. Remember what the Old Farmer's Almanac said. Winter would be late, but it would be very, very hard. It's here. Another story coming out of Climate Depot. This is from climatologist Dr. Roger Pilkey Sr., talking about this low-temperature anomaly. Record cold is coming to almost the entire United States. Low-temperature record set to be shattered. And interestingly enough, though, he's using the phrase anomaly. It's anomalous, like we're supposed to ignore the record cold while we go about our worship of St. Al of the Gore and his first church of human-caused global warming. It's amazing here. But they found a new villain. Used to be the polar vortex, and then it was the ocean and all the rest of it. And now, it's all Alaska's fault. There's a frigid air mass building in Alaska that is poised to spill into the lower 48 next week. And they're already saying it's already the coldest in the last 2 years up there in Alaska. And it's going to be coming down. That Polar Express is coming on down here, but don't you let all that snow and ice cause you to doubt global warming, because when the government and all the corporate media says humans are warming the earth, you will believe, because they are the real media. And those of us who are saying, look out the window at all the snow and ice, you know, we're now the fake media. And wait, what's up? All right, there we are. Now, NASA, which stands for Never a Straight Answer, has done something uncharacteristically valid and accurate, because, as you know, the global warming people have been trying to say it's getting warmer, it's all the fault of humans. NASA, looking at satellite measurements, is now saying that the corporatized, politicized science has gotten the issue totally wrong. And what they're saying is the only heat that they're detecting going into the atmosphere is the result of one of the strongest El Nino systems we have seen in decades. Now, El Nino is not caused by human activity. The Carbonazis have claimed it is, but I linked to an article I wrote on this very subject a while ago, because if you look at the thermographs of El Nino, it emerges as a point source from the Pacific Ocean north of New Zealand. You go back and you look at all the historical maps of El Nino, it all begins there. If it were human activity, the heat would be generated all over the land masses. El Nino starts as a point source, and as the current flows to the east, it spreads out. It blends with the other ocean, and it brings all this warming to the west coast of the Americas. When you take those maps of El Nino and that point source, and you place them over maps of the floor of the ocean, you see that El Nino is coming out of an area that has hundreds of volcanoes in it. Now, not every volcano is active, but the reality is nobody knows how many active volcanoes and thermal vents there are on the floor of the world's oceans, which is why all this nonsense about humans are contributing so much warming to the ocean, it was completely nonsense from the beginning. Because if you don't know how much heat is being poured into the oceans from geothermal events, you can't subtract it out. And if you can't correct for that source of heat, then any claims about how much human activity is warming the ocean is what we like to call a swag, meaning a scientific wild-ass guess, for which these people were being paid huge amounts of money. But El Nino is a geothermal event. If NASA or NOAA were really being honest about all of this, it would be time to run a survey of the floor of the Pacific in that area, looking for active volcanoes. Or if you can't get down to the actual bottom, just map the thermal plumes coming up from the bottom. Or look for those floating rafts of pumice that very often show up on the surface of the ocean from undersea volcanoes. Now, another one of the cherished items of the global warming cult was this idea that the warming of the Arctic is going to release more methane and carbon dioxide, accelerating the process. It'll be runaway out of control. And as it turns out, researchers at the San Diego State University have discovered something very unusual is going on in the Arctic, because they found the methane and carbon dioxide release is actually highest during the cold season. Warming the permafrost does not increase the flow of methane and carbon dioxide. They're not even really sure what's going on. Now, one possibility might be that as temperatures drop, various life forms have to expend more metabolic energy to maintain their body temperatures. They're breathing harder, they're eating more, and they release those gases in greater volume. That's one possible avenue of an investigation. But once again, what's actually going on in the world doesn't line up with the cherished theories of the Carbonazis. Now then, story coming out of the Washington Post, no less. Over 2,000 scientists are urging Donald Trump to respect scientific integrity and independence. And apparently they got 2,300 scientists, including 22 Nobel Prize winners, sent an open letter to President-elect Donald Trump and the 115th Congress urging them to adhere to high standards of scientific integrity and independence in responding to current and emerging public health and environmental health threats. In other words, they want the taxpayer money to keep flowing in, but don't question whether our work is sound or not. Don't question when we tell you that humans are warming there. Don't question when we tell you there is no link between vaccines and autism. Don't question when we tell you GMOs and glyphosate are absolutely perfectly safe. Don't you interfere with us, because we're getting all this other money from corporations to push their products. The science establishment, just like corporate media, is all of a sudden realizing their little party might be over. Now, given that so much tax money is, in fact, being poured into the science establishment, we have a right to look over their shoulder and double-check their work and demand the raw data, demand reproducibility. Reproducibility is a cardinal rule of the scientific method. When you come on out with a scientific report and you say, our research is showing the world is warming, we have a right to come on back and say, we'd like to see the raw data and your methodology. When they refuse to provide that, you should be smelling a big fat rat. And we went through that with the University of East Anglia and the Hadley Climate Research Unit, which was one of the major players in the ClimateGate scandal. Somebody leaked out emails and computer code showing they were rigging their results. I mean, when this whole global warming thing actually got started back in the 1990s, the Earth actually was warming. And they figured they would just ride the tide, make a whole bunch of money declaring it an imminent disaster and give us research funds and we'll tell you how to save yourself. And then all of a sudden, Mother Nature went the other way and the Earth started cooling. And they literally committed fraud to hide the decline so that the money would keep on going. And when Hadley Climate Research Unit came on out with this declaration that the Earth was warming, and they had the temperature data to prove it, and people said, can we see the temperature data? They had this lame excuse. They had run out of room on their computer and deleted all the raw data. Just take their words for it, because after all, they're scientists. Scientists won't lie to you. It's impossible to lie while wearing a white laboratory coat, after all. And the fact that these 2,300 scientists have written this letter is telling me there is now a moment of real panic going on in the science establishment. That the days of, believe me because I'm a scientist, are long gone. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And I just got an interesting email from a Charles G. Mills of the Fitzgerald Griffin Foundation. And they're already out there saying, well, as attractive as the idea of Hillary behind bars might be, it's a bad policy. We don't need to create a myth of the martyred Hillary Clinton. So with the collapse of the recount scam, they're already out there trying to sell the idea that it really would be okay to let Hillary Clinton skate free on all the crimes she has committed over the last 30 years. Obviously, I don't agree with that. But that's apparently the next propaganda campaign. You know, what's the point? She's an old lady. She can't harm anybody anymore. No, the issue is how many she's already harmed. How many people were assassinated? How many people had their careers destroyed? Not in a forgiving mood. Let's go to the phones here. Mateus in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, part of the reason to prosecute Hillary is to set a healthy precedent for other criminals to think twice before such extreme violations of law. That's part of the reason. It's not just revenge. It's partially revenge and well deserved.
Well, I mean, the whole idea of punishment of crime is as a deterrent, and you're absolutely right. We can't send a message to our children that you can do the kind of things that these people are doing and get away with it. If you're above a certain level, we need to restore the fact that justice and the law applies to everybody in this country, all the way up to and including the president.
Which brings me up to my original point of calling regarding presidential pardons. So you have a country that's a nation of laws that apply equally to everyone, and the potential benefit of a pardon being used to justly free a wrongfully convicted person, in my opinion, is greatly outweighed by the historical abuse of the pardon.
Well,
so I don't understand why we have a pardon.
No, because there are travesties of justice. We know, looking back, Bruno Richard Hauptmann was framed for the death of the Lindbergh baby. We know that Leonard Peltier was framed for the crime that he's in prison for. Same thing with Mumia al-Jabbar. Unfortunately, Obama only seems to be interested in pardoning convicted drug criminals, and he's pardoned a whole bunch of those.
Historical presidents, did they do a better job with the pardon than Obama?
You're going to have to take them on a case-by-case basis, but certainly Obama has issued more pardons, and he's on a roll. And most of the people who he is pardoning are those who were convicted of drug trafficking, and he's commuting their sentences. He's giving them get-out-of-jail-free cards. And that's not what I think that we want to see pardons used for. I mean, Bill Clinton was criticized for his pardon of Mark Rich. Gerald Ford, of course, was criticized for his unconstitutional and illegal blanket pardon of Richard Nixon and all of the Watergate criminals.
It just seems like dictators and kings have pardon authority, meaning the rules of law don't apply to anyone that they wish them not to apply to. And it just seems really contradictory to have this law of nations and this court system. It's not supposed to be perfect. Nobody claims it's perfect. And so, yeah, once in a while, a person's going to be wrongfully convicted, but it's better than having no justice system at all.
Obviously, I disagree. We have to have a way of correcting it when the justice system does make a mistake. Got to let you go here, Mateus. We got to do a station identification. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're going to go back to the phones. Bruce in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Thank you for taking my call. Real quick, I want to respond to that article you read concerning the scientific method and the scientists pleading to keep their pipeline open, funding and research. I guess that doesn't apply to the scientific method doesn't apply though to the Holocaust.
Yeah, they'll throw you in jail if you apply the scientific method to the Holocaust. In fact, every scientist who's applied the scientific method to the Holocaust gets arrested and thrown in prison. I mean, if you think about it, I think the reason for the success of the Matrix film franchise is people understood at some level it was a metaphor for the real world, that we are constantly bathed in lies and frauds and delusions to keep us under control, keep us doing what the masters want us to do.
Yeah, we've been fed a diet of illusions our whole lives, and it's
or like Westworld, or Westworld. I mean, that is also a perfect metaphor for our lives. Those hosts, they're programmed to believe they're living in this functioning Western town society, and don't realize they're just there to be used and abused. And I think that's one of the reasons why that show is such a huge success. And they've been renewed for next year, by the way.
Yeah, I haven't been able to catch an episode of that, but I need to maybe see if I can find it or something.
I'm sure it's online and everything. And can I give you some advice? Because J.J. Abrams is the executive producer, and what that means is you need to watch it from the beginning in order, or a lot of it won't make sense. You'll miss a lot of stuff. Same thing we had on Lost. If you weren't watching from the beginning, if you weren't watching the episodes in orders, it wouldn't make any sense. JJ actually broke with TV tradition, where TV series, each episode was its own self-contained story. So when it went into syndication, it didn't matter what, order they were shown at, whether it was the original Star Trek or Big Valley or any of that. They could just grab any of the episodes and show them, and it would make sense. Not with Lost and not with Westworld. You've got to watch it from the beginning. And like I said, I'm a fan. I'm an absolute fan of this show. And every time I go back and I'll rewatch the episodes, I'll pick up things I missed the first time before. It's a fantastically rich story. A lot of thought went into it. They've got some brilliant writers who are working on this thing.
Right, I'll look into it. There's a movie that will not be put on DVD, and it was a fairly good movie, and it was produced in I believe, the late 70s, early 80s. There's a Vietnam movie called The Boys in Company C. Do you recall that movie?
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, it was about heroin trafficking, and by using body bags to conceal the heroin through the CIA.
No, there's a lot of good movies, and no, they're not put on DVD, and you can't find them online. And again, they want them to go away. A more recent example, there was that documentary. It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, I think 3 years ago now, and it was called Inside Job, and it was about the 2008 meltdown. And it laid the blame where it richly deserved to be, on the bankers and the corrupt traders and everything. And after it won the Academy Award, it pretty much vanished from the American marketplace. I mean, there was a DVD that you can purchase, and I have a copy. And then immediately HBO came out with a movie that told the story from the point of view of the bankers about how they were heroically dealing with a situation not of their own making, and that thing got just constant play.
Before you let me go there, I just want to say my daughter narrowly missed being hit with radioactivity as a result of Fukushima, and perhaps we need to look further into the health condition of the sailors who did get exposed. She was aboard the Abraham Lincoln, and I met her ship in San Diego when they returned from their Westpac float, and they were stationed there off of Japan. Right, so 2 days before Fukushima, they were relieved by the USS Ronald Reagan.
Boy, that was a very. But according to Ann Coulter, a little radiation is good for you. So your daughter may have missed out on a possible blessing. Yeah. No, I remember when Chernobyl happened. The company I was working for in Hollywood had sent me and several of our other people to help set up some production studios in Germany and Italy, and I got rotated back home just weeks before Chernobyl blew. And when it did happen, our company evacuated all of our people still in Europe and brought them home.
Yeah. A number of sailors are coming out with cancer. They were hit with a cloud of radioactive steam.
Yep.
And I remember seeing they washed down the entire vessel and the airplanes and everything with soapy water. But so this is another instance of our military people being poisoned or injured and having to, having just hushed up,
Well, I remember when Fukushima first happened, and there was an announcement about this insane amount of radiation that had been released, and then 24 hours later, TEPCO came on out and said, our scientists made a mistake with the calculator. It wasn't that much radiation after all. And then, of course, years later, they came on out and they said, yeah, it was a major release, and the original number was actually correct. It's almost like people in top executive positions or the media or politics, lying is just the automatic thing to do. And that's a really bad example to be giving to our kids, to just say whatever's going to get you out of trouble and, so forth and so on. All right, we're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Did you have anything else, Bruce?
No, that's about it.
All right.
Thank you. Keep it up, and I'll call you back.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, in the world of computers, as you're probably aware, as of today, the rules regarding hacking by the U.S. government changed. The changes just came into effect. The corporate media is already making it look like this is something to do with Donald Trump. The surveillance efforts continue into the Trump era. Trump had nothing to do with it. And a lot of people are sounding the alarm regarding Rule 41 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, which basically allow U.S. judges to sign global hacking warrants. Now, I was unaware that any U.S. judge could sign any warrant that has any legitimacy or validity in any other country than the United States. But that's basically the attitude. All your data belong to us. And this attack on personal privacy continues. The German intelligence agency just got 150 million euros to develop ways of cracking the encryption of WhatsApp and other messaging services. Now, who is this going to harm? Well, it's going to harm ordinary people. It's going to stifle discussion, knowing that you're being spied on all the time. Will this affect the criminals and the terrorists? Of course not. The criminals and terrorists already know not to use these public messaging services. They're going to do what I did. They're going to develop their own encryption that the NSA will not be able to break. And it's alarmingly easy to do. We proved it 3 years ago. We created 6 encryption challenges. Not one of them was broken. Now, over in Great Britain, they just passed what is being called the Snoopers Charter. And Sir Tim Berners-Lee is already out there saying this is going to be a security nightmare. And Britain now has sweeping surveillance powers over the British subjects to know what you're saying, who you're saying it to, guess what you're thinking. And they're going to run into the same problem that the NSA has. They have got so much data, they're not going to be able to actually extract anything meaningful from it. And why you would think social media is going to be a source of reliable intelligence is a mystery. Everybody lies on Facebook, especially if they're trying to get a hot date for the weekend. There have been a couple of cases of people being arrested on the basis of talking big on Facebook about acts of terror, and they actually investigate and find out the people were just mouthing off to feel important. Now, of course, members of Parliament put an exception into the Snoopers Charter for themselves. They're exempt. Their communications cannot be spied on in the hunt for crimes and corruptions. Boy, if there was a segment of the population that ought to be snooped on all the time, it is the politicians. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. Ed in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I don't lie when I'm on looking for a hot date. I really do look like Steve McQueen.
Ah, okay. That may not work for you because he's dead.
But we talked about like when one door closes, another one opens, and like the wars in the Middle East. If they just got out of the Middle East, and I mean, couldn't tourism take over as far as the economy goes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the U.S. justification for allowing the farmers in Afghanistan to grow opium poppies is they wouldn't have a livelihood otherwise. And that's complete nonsense because when the Taliban was still in charge of Afghanistan, they shut the opium trade down completely. It starved the American drug lords of product, which was sort of an unspoken reason to go into Afghanistan. But all those farmers, they grew something else. Farmers are going to grow what they can make money with. And if it's opium poppies, they're going to do that, especially when they're being protected by those U.S. forces. And if opium market dries up, they'll grow something else. They'll grow corn. They'll grow food. They'll grow pakalolo, whatever. This idea that we have to keep military occupation and we have to let these things go on because these people will starve otherwise, it's another lie to get you to go along with the government's agenda.
I mean, the American people are the most imaginative folks on earth. Even the snowflakes and the pansies. I mean, so like science and protection. weapons, even our right to protect ourselves. You see where I'm going?
I see where you're going with that. I'd like to back up a little bit talking about creativity, because I'm not sure Americans are as creative as we used to be. And a lot of it has to do with the toys. Now, obviously, this being Christmas and having a lot of little people in our family and more on the way, we went on down to the toy store to buy some things here. Now, when I was a kid, we had toys like erector sets, basic wooden blocks, art supplies, chemistry sets, science toys that basically you had to figure out for yourself and be creative with. Looking at today's toy market, it's all nonstop product placement. Everything is tied in with a movie character. When I was a kid, Lego sets were just the bricks, and you had to think up what you were going to make with them. And today, Legos are sold in these kits that make just one item. And you follow the directions, and you get this finished Lego car or Star Wars spaceship or something. And in a way, I think it's undermining, de-emphasizing creative play in our children. And I think that's a tremendous loss, because out of that creativity and play, comes the innovation that we desperately need to revive our industrial base and our economy.
I know. I'm totally with you on that. I mean, I had a chemistry set, a microscope, a Wankel, the Wankel engine that you could see it.
Yeah, that was all really good. Yeah, those were good stuff. No, I loved all that. I loved all that stuff. Building model rockets and everything. We were just in love with science. And one of the good things about the original Star Trek TV series is it did kindle a surge of interest in science in America's kids. And we need to encourage that. We need to encourage kids to make up their own stories and their own characters. Of course, we're living in a culture where they want you to be dependent on a corporation for everything, whether it's your food, your water, your data on the cloud, your medical care, and even literally dependent on entertainment corporations for your dreams. And I think we need to fight back against that.
Keep up the good work, Mike.
All right.
You're doing a heck of a job out there.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. I appreciate it. I actually still have my erector set from when I was a kid. And there's a young child in our neighborhood that you just look at him and you realize there's a mind there. And so I gave it to him. And sure enough, building stuff that he's made up himself. And that's what it's really supposed to be all about. Okay, now then, as I mentioned to that caller before, the United Nations rejected Great Britain's second attempt to kill a motion for the immediate release of Julian Assange, and basically saying that he should be allowed out and stop all this nonsense about trying to punish him for being a whistleblower and the friend of the whistleblower. And I've had my issues with Assange from the early days, but at this point, there is no denying that he has shown a tremendous amount of heroism, and he has done a great deal of good, and he should be allowed out. I mean, if Obama can pardon convicted drug dealers left and right, why can't he write a pardon for Julian Assange? Why can't he write a pardon for Leonard Peltier, who is wrongfully convicted of a crime he did not commit? Same thing with Mumia al-Jabbar. Kind of makes you wonder what his priorities are. Now, apparently Twitter is considering banning Donald Trump and all of his Twitter channels on the excuse that Donald Trump's tweets represent hate speech. Now, what's really at issue here is Donald Trump is bypassing the corporate media and communicating directly with the American people through his own websites and through Twitter. And that's his main communication channel to the American people right now. And the corporate media does not like it. They want to be able to cut all contact between the president and you, the American people, so that the president is forced to go through their filtering system to get a message out to the American people, with that filtering system openly hostile to Donald Trump. And as we saw with the New York Times story about Trump not prosecuting Hillary Clinton, they're lying. They're making stuff up. They're misquoting him. So they're trying to cut him off. They're trying to bring down a big, giant silicon curtain between the President of the United States, the President-elect, and we, the American people. And all Twitter is going to do is drive everybody to the new services that are coming on up to replace them. Scene Life, Gab, all of those things. Okay, let's take a phone call. Sherry in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thank you. The one where, my kids were here for my birthday about a month ago.
Good.
And sadly, they both voted for Hillary. And they don't want to hear anything I have to say about it. And I was real respectful of them all day. We pulled up at the restaurant, and I said, listen, I can tell you one word that will nail Hillary. Just one word. And they piled out of the car. It's like, we don't want to hear it, Mother. We don't want to hear it. And it was like, well, I can tell you, Mike, the one word I couldn't tell my kids was intent.
Yes.
That's the one word that can nail Hillary, intent. So thank you for letting me unload that with someone who's willing to listen. And I have, there's two other things here. I have a friend in North Dakota. I keep trying to tell her, check into the Bank of North Dakota. She says, well, it's in Fargo, but we don't have it in our small town here.
Sherry, I'm going to have to put you on hold. We've got to take a break for commercials.
Okay.
Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Sherry in Texas. And Sherry, you had two more issues you wanted to raise.
Well, I wanted to mention this North Dakota, Bank of North Dakota. I have a friend that lives there, and I keep telling her, check into that bank. That's an independent. That's kind of now I've been in and out of the house a little when you were talking about banks. Did you mention the Bank of North Dakota, and is it different from the other, what you call central banks?
The bank
doesn't conform to.
No, the Bank of North Dakota is owned by the state. Now, they're still having to use the U.S. Federal Reserve notes, but it is a bank that's owned by the state that runs itself to serve the public. And North Dakota's economy is actually very, very good because of it. A lot of economists point to that and say all banks in the other states should run that same way. But of course, the bankers have a different idea. They want all banks to be private. They want all currency to be produced by loans at interest because banks are not about money. It's nothing but ink and paper or numbers in a computer. Banks are a system of enslavement. Private central bank. Go ahead.
Go on.
No.
Okay, I understand. The Bank of North Dakota isn't going to divert from any of those rules in any way?
No, they still have to operate under the laws of banking in this country. The difference is their priority is not on maximizing profit as much as it is on being a service to the community. And when we talk about the banks, we're talking about the big banks. Your mom and pop regular depositor bank does serve a very useful purpose within the community by allowing the citizens to pool their money together to fund projects that can't be funded privately, such as new businesses and so forth. Unfortunately, the private central banks are essentially legalized counterfeiting operations. Their goal is to hijack the currency of a nation and privatize it for their own profitability. And they just make the money up out of thin air, loan it out at interest, and you are now the slave of anybody who's got those pieces of ink and paper to give you to repay the bank with. And it is a system of enslavement.
Mm-hmm. I know. I told her about this, and she says she's with Wells Fargo. I said, isn't there a good, strong, smaller bank there you can do business with? And she says, no, not really. And I'm just concerned for her. That's all. I just thought there'd be another avenue for her. She says she's going to be subject to the fees and the whatevers that they're going to be imposing in order to rake in more of our money.
Now, that's exactly right, and we're seeing it in India. They've already started withdrawing cash from circulation. They almost locked up the economy. The people of India are very mad. And now, even more alarming, we are getting word that the government of India is now considering a ban on the private ownership of gold, because a cashless society can't work if there's another means of holding your wealth in your own hand. And this is going to be a real shock, because India, up until recently, has been one of the world's major consumers of gold. Everybody has gold jewelry. I mean, you go down any marketplace in India, there are all these stalls selling bracelets and rings and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, India is going to shut down that entire industry and demand everybody turn their gold into the government, the way Roosevelt did here in 1933. It'll be a shock to India's economy. It'll be a shock to the global gold market. But right now, these bankers are desperate because they're all hovering at the edge of a collapse, and the only thing they can think of doing is find some way to take more money away from ordinary people to keep themselves going.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's funny, while we're talking here, I'm hearing this beep, and I'm on a landline. I'm not on a cell phone.
That may be coming in from RBN's end. So I wouldn't worry about it.
It's kind of interesting. I've never been beeped before. Okay, well, anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about was I was watching, I can't remember if it was Friday or Sunday. I think it was on NBC, though. But it was regarding this Trump not wanting to prosecute Hillary. And I think it was on the TV or radio. I wish I could remember, but I heard Trump say.
Sherry, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to put you on hold again.
I don't mind.
All right, we'll come right back to you and Donald Trump and whether Hillary should be investigated or not. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to Sherry in Texas. You wanted to talk about whether Hillary Clinton should be investigated and prosecuted or not.
Well, the thing is I was listening, it might have been on NPR, and I heard Trump say, when he was asked, are you going to prosecute Hillary, he said, it's not a priority. Then he added something, and you were talking about this earlier, how they took what he added and changed the whole answer. I heard him say, it's not a priority. And then Trump said he won't prosecute, So,
no, that's not what he said. What he actually said was, it's not a priority, and I don't want to seek revenge on Hillary Clinton, which is a very prudent thing for him to say, because if there is an investigation, when there's an investigation, Hillary's people are going to say, oh, it's all about Trump getting his revenge. It's all, and try and deflect the reality that the Clintons have just gotten away with an amazing amount of high crimes and misdemeanors. So what Trump is signaling is, the investigation will be proper and formal and comply with all the rules and regulations, and he's probably going to leave it in the hands of his Attorney General and whoever he picks to head the FBI, and stay out of it so that they can deflect accusations, of animosity.
I said that wrong. I had written here that the host said, that Trump said that he won't prosecute, but it was the part about the revenge I couldn't remember. It's not a priority, he said. So I'm saying, like an idiot to the radio, that's not what he said. He said it's not a priority. And the guy was going on. I said, he said it's not a priority. I heard him say it. And then I heard them come back with this entirely different answer. And what got me is that how stupid do they think we are? Because, we know our experiences. We know what we go through. I was a victim of voter fraud once when I lived in the South. This guy tried to get me to choose between a white guy and a black guy. He said, I just want to show you. The first time I ever voted, I won't give the state because I love the South. I don't want to, point fingers. But I was going in the little booth. He showed me the little levers, and he said, this guy's white, this guy's black. I'm just letting you know. I said, oh, thank you. So I went in, and I voted for the black guy because I figured he needs all the help he can get. We know our experiences. They can't fool us. They look like idiots. That's my point.
They are, and they're panicking. And unfortunately, yes, they're in the habit of thinking we're all morons and, easily duped, clueless sheep out here, and they're learning just now, no, that's not what's going on. Now, the NPR story was based on the article in the New York Times, which had the headline, Donald Trump not going to criminally investigate Hillary Clinton. But it turned out the reporters who interviewed Donald Trump basically selectively quoted him and misquoted him, because in the actual transcript of the interview, they asked him point blank, are you going to take investigations of Hillary Clinton off the table? And Donald Trump says no. And the New York Times went to press with this headline. Everybody picked up on it. They went on out and immediately confronted all of Trump's supporters. Trump says he's not going to investigate the Clintons. How do you justify that? So they literally created a whole new bunch of quotes from Trump's aides and assistants saying there's not going to be an investigation. It was kind of a bum's rush. The New York Times has now been forced to backtrack and admit that the story was in error. And this is how the corporate media is operating. They're desperate to protect Hillary Clinton. And now that it looks like this recount and electoral college gambit is failing, we're seeing articles like the one I just mentioned a little while ago about all the reasons we shouldn't prosecute Hillary Clinton. Yes, seeing her in prison would be good, but we'd only be making a martyr out of her. And the reality is we need to make an example out of her. Because
isn't there? Let's go on.
We need to make an example out of her and Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and all the people who enabled and helped her to send a message to future aspiring politicians, no, you're not going to be able to get away with this stuff. And that's the reason, that we need to go after the Clintons on this, not for revenge, but as a deterrent to future generations of ambitious politicians. We need to hold these people accountable to the same laws we're all required to live by. And again, I think one of the reasons there is such a panic over an investigation of Hillary Clinton is I am more and more convinced, based on how they're behaving and reacting to this, that Hillary Clinton was indeed selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests using her weak email server to deliver and that charitable foundation to collect and launder the payments. And it is a huge scandal, one that could destroy the legitimacy of the government itself. But it needs to be brought on out, or we're going to have more people thinking they can get away with this stuff. They'll come into office thinking, oh, well, how would the Clintons handle this? And that'll become the new model for behavior of all future politicians.
Right, set a precedent. We have to set a precedent. It's absolutely essential. But this obstruction of justice charge, I mean, it's still out there, right? It's still out there waiting.
All of these charges, all of these crimes are still out there. When FBI Director Comey said we're not going to bring charges, it wasn't an exoneration. Those charges can still be filed under the administration of Donald Trump, and that's why everybody is in such a panic right now. Anyway, Sherry, got to let you go. Got another caller waiting on the line. Got some news I got to get to here. And before we take this next phone call, a listener wrote on in and pointed out the film that the other caller talked about, the Boys and Company C, about the heroin smuggling that was going on during Vietnam, is available to view on Amazon Prime. And more, that is looking like a really good deal because Amazon is carrying these movies we need to be seeing, whether it's Boys and Company C or Vaxxed. And you're going to find stuff there that apparently Time Warner Cable doesn't feel that you should be allowed to look at here. Somebody else wrote in to remind me that our new head of the Pentagon was actually forced out by Obama for daring to question the U.S. policy on Iran. So it looks like a man who's got the courage of his convictions, and it's looking more and more like that was a good choice. All right, let's grab a phone call. John in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. I want to let you know that there is a lot of creativity out here amongst the youth and everything. There is. It's just that old saying, time is money and money is time. And they don't want us to know, because if we start really thinking about it, how much they spend. Last year, $548 billion. This year, $577 billion. Nobody should be working in America. They should be subsidized and have each opening up a small business, have Bob and Bill's Burger Shop next to Jim and Jones's hot dog shop.
Well,
really,
you hit a valid
it's really
point
quite
there.
sad.
You hit a valid point there because in the normal economy before 2008, small businesses were responsible for 60% of new job creation. And when they created this economic climate where small businesses are being driven out of business so that corporations can consolidate their marketplace, they also destroyed a major creator of jobs. And when you add to that the offshoring that's been going on, you come to this inevitable conclusion that nobody in our central government for the last 30 years was really thinking the long view, the wide view, what's best for the nation as a whole. Everybody was just there selling their authority and their power to the highest bidder to maximize corporate profitability. And again, in the long run, it's very, very destructive. It's like this point I'm making about autism. At the current exponential rate of growth, by 2030, half of our children will be diagnosed as autistic. That means half the American population will be unavailable for the labor force, and a significant portion of the remaining labor force is going to be all tangled up with the care and support of the autistic, leaving too few people to work in the factories, work in the fields, be policemen, firemen, and so forth and so on. So this current policy of vaccines and autism is wonderfully profitable in the short term for the corporations, but in the long term, it risks a systemic crisis.
It's not only disgusting, Michael, though, it's sick. Because the way they portray it is by, oh, look, we give all this money to the military, we care about the military, and then they come out talking about the flag. When you have, you're a Vietnam vet now dying. They're dying, and that happened to the World War II. That happened to the World War I. I went into Iraq in 2003, and already I see it. I see it. It's sick. It's sick. When you have people out there homeless, and they say they're from Nam in Korea, you question everything. I went in when I was 16. I didn't know any better. They came to our high school.
No, I remember when the recruiters came to my high school, for Vietnam, and, a lot of people went, and a lot of people never came back. And a lot of people never really came all the way back. And that was the real tragedy there. And that's one of the reasons why I've been working so hard to head off this rush into World War III.
It's sick because it's all corporations.
Yeah.
The college is subsidized. That GI Bill was supposed to be given out to the soldiers. That's how it was wrote when the BEF marched for it, because it was that stipend that they were owed after World War I. And now they got it in a way where the colleges and everybody just takes everything from the vets. It's taken in ways that make it seem like we're helping you in healthcare or in education. When we really found out it's all just a fraud. When best thing they
we're being sold illusions.
For you to use.
We're being sold illusions. We're told the FDA is looking out for the health and safety of our food. We find out they're not. We're being told that the Minerals Management Service is guaranteeing the safety of the oil infrastructure. They aren't. We're being told the Securities Exchange Commission is keeping an eye on Wall Street, and then we find out that they ignored Bernie Madoff for 12 years. We're all paying this huge amount of money for a lie and an illusion. It's a scam.
That's what I'm saying. They don't care about their people scamming people, but yet they don't want to give us our own money.
No, they absolutely do not. Bit by bit, they're taking away all of our freedoms, including the freedom to have our own wealth in our own pocket, to make us dependent on those banks, because that dependency is another form of enslavement. I wrote an article, I think, back in July, pointing out how right now we're suffering many of the same evils that had led to the writing of the Declaration of Independence, that enforced dependency for everything that you need from government-favored entities and corporations, private central banks, the constant spying, and all the rest of that. And anyway, John, listen, I need to let you go because we're almost out of time, and I need to get back to some stories here. So thank you very much.
Nice talking to you, Mike. You have a good one.
All right, same to you. We're going to let you go here. We're talking about computers and computer technology. As we mentioned earlier, up in San Francisco, there was some kind of an attack on the computers running the Municipal Transport Agency, which resulted in everybody riding for free for one day. And as it turns out, they were hit with a ransomware attack that demanded a ransom of 100 bitcoins. I'm not kidding, just 100 bitcoins. I think the real point was a demonstration of ability, not the cash. The transport system lost far more money letting everybody ride for free than the 100 bitcoins. I think somebody was doing a demonstration. Meanwhile, over in Germany, more than 900,000 routers belonging to Deutsche Telekom users in Germany were hacked and unable to connect to the Internet. Meanwhile, TalkTalk and post office routers have been hit by a cyber attack, cutting off Internet access. Now, where is the mighty NSA in all of this? Where's the FBI? Where's the CIA? We were told that the reason for the NSA to have all this computer equipment in these data centers is they were there to guard and protect and secure the nation's IT infrastructure. They're doing a really lousy job, aren't they? We were told that the reason we had to give up our Fourth Amendment guarantee of the right of privacy was so that the NSA could protect us from criminals and hackers. They're not doing it, are they? Right now, ransomware attacks are now up 8 times what they were just a year ago. Maybe the NSA are the ransomware writers. Kaspersky Labs came on out and said that the hacker collective, the Equation Group, tracked back to NSA servers. Maybe the ransomware, like civil forfeiture, is just another way for the government that's hopelessly in debt, totally broke, to plunder the American people. Now, if you're an Android user, there's another malware out there called Gooligan. It's already infected 1 million devices. It roots your device, so it's totally open, and it steals email addresses and authentication tokens. And it also opens up and downloads apps from Google Play and then gives them a favorable rating using your stolen identity. And apparently they're able to make some money doing this, because companies that will log in and give favorable ratings to apps do exist. If you've got the money, you can hire these companies to go on out and load up Facebook and LinkedIn and all these other things. Oh, he's a really great guy. The political candidates we're using, remember, Hillary Clinton, most of her Twitter and Facebook followers were manufactured fakes and frauds. Now, Lenovo is out there warning that if you are using one of their servers, you need to block Microsoft's November security update because it's freezing systems. And this is Microsoft Security Update MS-16-140 running on Windows Server 2016, 2012 R2, and 2012. It's a big problem. These companies are putting out patches without really testing them. And even worse, researchers have discovered that 10 models of pacemakers are open to hack, where somebody could literally stop your heart if you're wearing one of these devices. And aloha America, welcome back to our show here and last segment of our program on this Thursday. Now, proving once again that Hillary supporters are petty, vindictive individuals, somebody has come up with an extension for the Chrome browser, where if you are reading any articles and they contain the term alt-right, which is the new term of castigation for those of us who do not want to live in Hillary Clinton's utopian society, it will automatically change the phrase to white supremacy. Now, I can't imagine anybody actually wanting to install this, but it shows the mindset of what's going on inside their heads. Now, we've been talking how the revelation of censorship, control, banning by the established social media companies, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Google, and so forth, has opened up an opportunity for brand new companies to come on in and get established, offering social media that is free from censorship, that respects the First Amendment. And I had mentioned the other day about how wonderful it would be to have a peer-to-peer social network system that was impossible to control and censor because it had no central point. And I was pointed to a sort of a clone, if you will, of Twitter called Diaspora, which is a free tool you can get, free account rather, from the Open Software Foundation, which does a lot of really good work in crowdsourced software development, mostly for the Linux platforms. But they've set up this Diaspora. I set up a membership. I've already started posting things there. And it works really well. Now, it's still evolving and growing. It doesn't have all the functionality of Twitter. But it's now in my list of links to post important things to. And I think we need to start abandoning Google in favor of Yandex. We need to abandon Facebook and Twitter in favor of Scene Life and Gab and Diaspora. There's no law that says we have to go on using those other services. They make huge amounts of money off of us with advertising. And then they turn around and presume to tell us what we should think, what we should see. We had a video by somebody that we put up at WhatReallyHappened.com about how YouTube is playing games with videos. And we've seen that here. A lot of our videos are getting very high viewer numbers, and then all of a sudden overnight, the numbers get cut by 90%. They hoped we wouldn't notice, because they don't want us to hit those trending lists. Now, Congress has just banned online store gag orders. This is a good thing, because if you go on to the website of an online retailer that you've had a bad experience with and you post a bad review, they'll try and sue you or otherwise retaliate. Congress has now passed a law saying, no, you have a right to post a negative review if you are, in fact, being treated badly. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Remember, you are part of the independent media. Take what you learn here at Republic Broadcasting, WhatReallyHappened.com. Share it with everyone you know. Be gentle. You're dealing with people who swallowed that blue pill, and it's going to take a while to wean them off of it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.